You're listening to the Otis Jiry channel. I used to get letters from my nightmares. By JASPER DEWITT. Performed by Otis Jiry. Part 1. When I was 10, my parents gave me a dream journal. I hated it on sight. Now, please understand, I'm not saying that to exaggerate. I literally hated it before I even knew what it was. You see, I got that dream journal for Christmas, and my parents, in the usual expression of benevolent parental sadism that most children experience before the holidays, left all our presents out under the tree days in advance, which meant that I and my kid sister Grace had to restrain ourselves from tearing open the wrapping paper, even though our fingers itched just looking at all those boxes, and our mouths started to water just imagining what was in the stockings. Or at least that was true every year except the year I got the dream journal. I don't know what it was about that small little box in nondescript cloudy blue wrapping paper stuck off to the side of the usual gaudy pile of green, red, and gold wrapped parcels, but for some reason, its just being there spoiled the effect. That's probably why I chose to open it first. You see, my family had a tradition that on Christmas Eve, us kids would get to pick just one present to open as an appetizer for the bounty we were set to gorge our curiosity on the following day. Gracie, she did what most little children do and picked the biggest box she could, apparently not caring that it would make the rest of the experience of opening presents anticlimactic if it was anywhere near as nice as its size implied. I, however, picked that sky blue box just because I wanted it to stop being there. I don't know why, but my irrational hatred of that particular present was so strong that I was certain I'd be able to muster 1 ounce of excitement about opening the rest of the packages if that one was still among them when the sun came up. So I pulled it out from under the tree and ripped the paper off with vengeful relish. I don't know what I was expecting to come out. Probably a dead rat or a slug or a human hand or something like that. So you can imagine my surprise when what fell out was indeed a very pretty book with wide cream-colored pages all bound up in black leather. At first I thought it was a picture book or some sort of novel. When I saw the pages were blank, I realized it wasn't anything like that. My father must have sensed my confusion, because he leaned over and started thumbing through it while explaining, in that patronizing and absurd voice that all adults think will sound comforting, that it's a dream journal, Emma. From now on, whenever you have one of your dreams, you can write it down here before you forget. That way, if it's a good dream, you can remember it longer, and if it's a bad one, you'll feel better just getting it out of your system. I think I must have almost thrown it when I heard that. Now, I knew why I hated the stupid thing, for even though my father made a point of leading with the idea that I could write down good dreams in it, I'm sure he knew that I knew nothing like that was going to happen. The truth was that he and Mother had been worried about me for ages, because it seemed like there wasn't a night that went by when I didn't wake up screaming from a nightmare. Truth be told, I still can't recall a single night in my childhood when I had a peaceful night's sleep, to the point where I think I just assumed nightmares were a normal side effect of being asleep. I certainly always wondered why my little sister Grace never seemed to object at all, let alone as strongly as I always did when our parents said it was bedtime. The thing is, though, it wasn't just the frequency of my nightmares that was so odd. Yes, the content was fairly standard, as they Usually involved monsters or ghosts or some other unidentifiable menace that went bump in the night, but what stood out was, for lack of a better word, the form. By that I mean, as scary as my early nightmares were, they weren't actually about me because I never experienced my nightmares in the first person. Rather, I would always seem to witness whatever horror my mind chose to conjure as if it were happening to someone else. It was sort of like watching a play with all the terror of the experience being transmitted vicariously, except no actor or director could ever make you empathize with the characters viscerally enough to be scared on their behalf as I was for the actual victim in my nightmares. Oh, and that's another thing. It's not like I kept imagining bad things happening to different people. The person suffering in my nightmares was always the same. A little boy with long, light brown hair, freckles, and a round face. I didn't really know what to call him, so I just thought of him as Sad Boy for most of my childhood. That is, until I got the dream journal. And whether because I dreaded the scolding I'd get for throwing away a Christmas present, or because some part of me sensed my parents wouldn't give up on trying to get me to record my nightly visitations, I kept it by my bedside when I went to sleep that night. I wish I hadn't. The nightmare I had that night was worse than any I've ever experienced, even with endless terror plaguing my brain. I don't think I could have forgotten it even without the events that followed, but we'll get to that soon enough. Let me tell you about that first dream. To begin with, even by my standards, it was uncharacteristically vivid. Normally, when I dreamt, the one mercy was that the dreams themselves eschewed complete photorealism, either rendering themselves as if they'd been painted, or else with the proceedings taking place at a great remove from me, so that I only had a vague idea of what was happening. But not this one. In this one, everything seemed real enough and close enough at hand that I felt as if I might be able to reach out and touch it. In retrospect, I'm very glad I didn't try. In the dream, the sad boy began going to sleep in his bed. I remember that, unlike my own sumptuous four-poster, it was a shabby thing. Nothing but nails and wood clumsily encircling a mattress that looked as if it had been eaten by generations upon generations of bedbugs. When I felt myself in the room, the sad boy was already asleep, and for just a moment I thought perhaps I might have escaped a nightmare. His sleep was so peaceful. Nothing could disturb it now. Then his face twisted into an expression of terror, and he curled into a fetal position as thousands and thousands of bedbugs suddenly tore their way out of his bed and began circling him like a malevolent, blood-hungry cloud. No, a cloud wasn't what it was. It was a vortex in which the scratching, chittering, biting bugs were mere atoms of filth dragging him down into whatever hellish vision of terror I was doomed to witness. I did not follow him down that crawling, hellish, bottomless abyss of filth and parasitism, but I felt the terror of his experience and felt a sickening nausea as he twisted through its depths, falling deeper and deeper into some dimension of hellscape I knew I could not imagine. He was nearly at the bottom when his terror reached a fever pitch, a feeling I felt so acutely that I opened my own mouth to scream. As I did, a voice infinitely younger, more terrified, and decidedly not my own, poured forth from my mouth. "Help!" That noise must have woken me up, for the next thing I remember is sitting up in my bed, the noise of my own cry apparently having jolted me from sleep. I tried to suppress the memory briefly before I remembered the dream journal lying beside me. Grudgingly, I picked it up and flipped to the first page, meaning to record my vision in all its gruesome detail. But something stopped me. For on the first page of the journal, written in red ink that I knew could not have come from any pen I knew, there was a single word, scrawled with such frantic desperation it was barely legible. It ran, "Help." I shut the journal and didn't sleep a wink for the rest of that night. I told myself it must have been an accident, that perhaps I had sleepwalked and written that final awful word before tucking myself back in bed just in time to wake up. I prayed that was all it was. I was so wrong.